Welcome to another episode of Tara's Voice. I'm here today with my friend Jess Hass, and we have a great history together that we will tell you about. But I just wanted to let you know upfront who she is. She's an integrative health coach. She works in functional medicine, and she is a wife and the mother of two boys. My daughter was actually her flower girl at her wedding. So we have known each other for many, many years, going on almost 2 decades now. And I'm excited for us to have a conversation that is completely irrelevant. I have no idea what question will come up. So, Jess, on the wheel, some of these were submitted by other people, some of them weren't. So, we'll just kind of see what pops up today. Okay. Let's go ahead and pull up our wheel. All right. Ready?
All right, let's do this.
And it's spinning. And our question today is all right. The one class in high school that was your biggest waste of time. So, what was your one class in high school that was your absolute biggest waste of time?
That is really difficult to answer because in high school, I was doing a lot of really cool things. Biggest waste of time. I mean, one of my classes was just going to work, so that might have been like the biggest waste of time. I was doing really cool things. I was doing research papers about cloning, and I was traveling, and I
Okay,
really
wait, 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 wait,
enjoyed high
wait,
school.
wait. Because I'm thinking as that question popped up, my immediate answer, and I'm so sorry for every teacher I'm about to offend and all of my past teachers, was I don't know, probably most of them. So I'm like, what school were you at? Where were you going to school?
So I went to the school called the Jefferson County Open School, and it's a Montessori school, pass fail. I didn't know that people sat at desks until I was in middle school. I thought that was like ancient history. Thought that was Little House on the Prairie. We sat on couches. We had peer groups that reviewed our work. We were doing work in the community, practical skills development, travel. I went out and rebuilt a red wolf habitat. I canoed the Mississippi River. I did some really cool stuff when I was in high school. So this whole like grades and normal school thing that my kids are going through is just it's like I don't understand what they're doing. I really don't. It's a whole new world for me because my kids are in the gifted program, and so they're like in this high level, like very intense study, and I was like, I passed because my peers thought that I was doing a thing that was aligned with my visions. Yeah, my school was weird.
This is wild to me. Okay, so wait a minute. I'm going to go back. Did you start this in kindergarten?
Yep, preschool.
And then did you do this all through high school or did you ever go to a traditional school?
I went to the same school from preschool to high school. There was 160 kids in my school total, and I graduated in a class of 20.
Oh my gosh. So I have so many questions now. So what made your parents choose this completely non-conventional route?
I don't know. My mom was a teacher. She was a special educator. She worked in regular schools. It was close to my grandma's house, so I don't know if I just stumbled into it. Actually, thinking about it, my cousins went there, and that's probably why I ended up going.
That's even more interesting given the fact that your mom was a teacher. You would think
Hmm.
then she would want you in a traditional school. Now, did your parents have to pay for this or was this part of public education?
It's a public school still operating and going today.
And
It
then
was
why
started
go ahead.
it was started in Evergreen as like this hippie commune school, and it moved down into Lakewood. But
It
yeah,
totally sounds like a hippie communist.
yeah. The Fridays that we would have walkabout on Fridays, and so we would go do this walkabout thing where we were to get in. You had to hike Mount Evans, and you had to do a solo overnight, and otherwise you couldn't graduate. Like just crazy things like that.
So, okay. So why did you choose to put your children then in a very mainstream school when you had this completely different experience?
My children have a different learning style. I found that some people, if you're really motivated, self-motivated, it's a great school for you. But I watched a lot of people fall through the cracks, and it was not amazing for spelling and some of the really basic skills, math skills, and things like that. I was a very motivated kid, so I did okay. But I still struggled to get like through the basic classes in college and stuff. I stopped taking math in middle school because I had the choice to do what I wanted. Um, so I had to go back and do a lot of regressive, like, learning, which was fine because they taught us you learn how to learn, and that's really the important part. So I never struggled with that. Also, they didn't get in, so it's a lottery. And so they didn't get in initially.
Okay.
And then we tested my older son, and he was so high on the scales that they skipped him over kindergarten and put him into first grade, which in retrospect was a terrible idea. But at the time, he was testing so high, he could have done the work of a first grader. He just forgot, like, by skipping a kid over kindergarten, they're not learning how to tie their shoes and put their backpack away and some really essential things that I hadn't thought about at the time. So that was kind of a whole learning curve on its own. But now he's really settled in. He's going to middle school and he's going to be in advanced seventh grade math next year, and he'll be
Wow,
in
I feel
sixth
like
grade.
I feel like
Yeah.
he can probably do more math than I can. Math
Yeah.
was my terrible trauma, could not wait. I think in college I took a computer class pass fail to fulfill my math requirement
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
math was just horrible for me. It started in 7th grade. That was the beginning of my hatred for math. Um,
Yes.
so this is very interesting because and I don't know, we've never talked about this. So my daughter, when we moved to New Jersey, so Jessica and I know each other from when we lived in Colorado, and my daughter did kindergarten in Colorado and then did first grade in New Jersey. And I really didn't, in retrospect, right? It's always so easy in retrospect, right? You're like, I'm such a great parent when I in retrospect. And I didn't really appreciate that a first grader moving was going to be that difficult. I think if she had been in middle school, I would have been more prepared for this is a giant move. I thought, oh, no big deal. It's just first grade. And it actually was really, really difficult for her because these kids had all gone to kindergarten to each other. They all knew each other. They were all from the same town. And she was like this quote, new weird kid. And she was missing a lot of school because of medical appointments, because of her, cancer follow up. And at the time, she was wearing her hearing aids, which she refuses to wear now, And so there were things that kind of quote made her weird, right? And she really struggled to adjust. And by the end of 5th grade, I had really seen a change from the kid that you knew, who was this feisty, confident kid, to a very introverted, self-aware, not self-aware in a good way, like very self-conscious is the word I'm thinking,
Mhm.
very self-conscious, kind of losing who she was. And so I thought, we're not doing middle school, right? Because middle school is just a breeding ground to destroy children's self-esteem. And so I thought, nope, we're going to look at different alternatives. And we looked at a school which sounds very familiar to what you're describing. It was called the Free School. And it was based on a democracy. The kids ruled the school. And so they met in the morning and they had a circle and there was like a stick. And so I went in and I sat in at the school and you pass the stick. And I remember there were these boys who I guess had misbehaved in the computer room in the school. It was this big old house. And so the other kids had to decide the punishment or the, consequence for these boys who had violated the computer room rules, right? And so there were adults there, but they really didn't, they were just equal to the child.
Mhm.
And they had to buy on one hand, it sounded really great. Like they had to buy new couches. And so the students had to get together and they learned how to learn how to budget and they had to learn how to shop and they had to learn how to buy a new couch for the lounge upstairs. On the other hand, it was very much what you're saying, which was there was no curriculum, there was no structure. It was based on the idea that children are naturally inquisitive. And so they will naturally follow the things that they are interested in, and we will help them explore the things that they are interested in, but we will never push them to do that. And I remember asking the lady, well, what if my daughter wants to show up with an iPad every day and play video games? And she said, well, we will just let her do that until she doesn't want to do that anymore. And as parents, like you were not supposed to ask your child about their day. It was only if they wanted to tell you, they could tell you about their day. And I thought, I think of myself as a pretty cool parent, but that school absolutely showed me I was not. I was not cool enough to be that free. I was like, you mean she can just go wild? And it was just way too out there for me. On the other hand, I've been very vocal about the fact that I think our current school system doesn't really set kids up for life skills,
No.
right? in any way. It's just I don't know what the answer is because that was way too loose for me. But I also look at regular school, and I think we saw this a lot during the pandemic. It was really difficult to kind of sell her on the fact that you had to be in school 9 to 3 every day when she had just gone through a year where they were in school half the time, working remotely and still doing all their classes. And she was like, "Why do you have to waste my time till 3 o'clock every day?" And I thought, I don't really have a good answer for you.
Yeah, there's gotta be an in between because our school was very similar to that where there was a governance of a student body, and if somebody did something that was offensive, I remember somebody wrote something vulgar on a trash can, and it's like the whole I mean, for a whole day, it was that democratic debate, but it gave me some really neat tools, and it taught me to not be afraid to try anything, right? And so I do worry with my kids in normal school. I'm like, because they're very quiet. Well, at least my oldest is quiet and reserved and trying to do everything perfectly. And it's like, no, you've got to go out and experiment and actually have real world hands on experience. There's so much with computers and everything else where you're so disconnected. So yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but
So how did you take like the SATs and stuff to prepare for college? Because when you went on to college, that must have been a complete culture shock to say, now I have to sit in a room and take all these tests.
the tests weren't normal for me. It wasn't something that I grew up with, but we studied for the SATs at school and we wrote word for word our entire transcript. So we had to write a paragraph about every class that we took in school. I have like an 80-page transcript that I had to write. And some schools really love that. I knew kids that went into Harvard with that kind of transcript because there's just like, this is what I learned from this class. This is what I did. I remember we made a life-size DNA out of golf balls and we were like staying at the school overnight and like drilling holes in golf balls all night. And just, I mean, like bizarre stuff. But then you have to say, okay, what did I take from that? How is this beneficial? And how is this going to help me get in college? And so it was an interesting challenge to go back and go, okay, that's how that worked. That's why that supports whatever it is that I'm trying to pursue going forward.
Do you feel like you were more prepared emotionally for college because you were used to being so independent? Because I know one of the things they talk about with the transition is the struggle of children really being told what to do, being very confined, right? You have to show up now, you have to sit in your school, this is what's due. You're kind of very handheld through high school that then they get to college and they just fall apart, right? Um, but I'm wondering in a school like what you experienced, was it a little bit easier because you already had all this autonomy and independence and everything?
So they taught us how to write college level papers when we were at like I think it was my second year in high school. I was writing a college level paper and making sure that it was, the note cards and the citations and all the things. So that part wasn't an issue. And the freedom and knowing like I would go to work for some of my classes, I would come back. So I was driving to and from school. It was very much like being in college. There really wasn't, I don't remember going, oh, college, that's hard or that there wasn't a transition for me. It was just kind of more of the same.
Wow. All right. So I'm interested in listeners, kind of what your thoughts are on this, because I feel like this can be a very divisive thing, right? You have people who are very mainstream. You go to school, you do your basic math, English, writing, history, you follow that. And then you have other people who maybe personally had really bad high school experiences. We have a lot of issues with bullying. I feel like every time you hear about these crazy school shootings or you hear about, mass shootings, they always go back to the guy was a loner, right? He had no friends or he was bullied or, whatever. Or a lot of these people who have, that end up in the news. And I think we don't talk about enough about the damage that students do to each other, the meanness, the bullying. And now with the social media, I heard a really interesting thing with social media about the rise because I think it affects more girls than boys statistically, the social media with the depression and the anxiety and everything. But they said, if you went to school and let's say there was a party on Friday night and you didn't get invited, but everybody else did, you may hear about that a little bit in school. You may know you weren't invited, but you got to go home and you were really removed from that. You were with your family or you were with the friends that you did have. where now you're at home and you could literally be watching and seeing all the posts, all the Snapchats, everything that's going on that you're not part of. Right. And you don't get that break from whatever's going on in school, no matter how bad school is. When you get home and you close that door, it's gone. Now it's literally following you right to your bedroom in your phone. And I thought, oh, that's like a huge
Which may be
problem.
why we need schools like what I did more and more. Because first, the school system that we have right now, it's made like our society, we're trained to do the things like a machine. And it's
Yeah.
causing people to get burnt out. It's causing people to be overwhelmed. I mean, that's what I coach is burnt out women and men as well, but people who are at the brink of this burnout. They're efficient, they're doing everything right, they're doing all the right stuff, and yet they feel this pressure that's just like coming down on them because there's so much access to always being doing. And I mean, the amount of times I talk to people about just eating lunch at their desk and how damaging that is for the gut, that alone is this huge thing now that didn't used to be a thing. But it's like people don't take a lunch break, they don't step away, they don't turn off, they don't have weekends. And so this, the way that I went to school, they taught us to learn how to learn and be efficient, but not like a machine. It was not mechanistic. It was not you do the same exact curriculum as everyone else and we grade you like a machine. And if you don't think the way that someone else thinks, it's like some are auditory learners, some are visual learners, some people are, more interested in Shakespeare. My Shakespeare teacher was fabulous. I was learning Shakespeare in high school, and this woman was just like telling all of these little details about Shakespeare I didn't even pick up in college when I was going for theater, right? Um, so
I will say on a side note, my college theater teacher was, and again, I was like 19, so who knows how old he really was, but he was like this young hot professor, and everybody wanted to take Shakespeare because if you have taken Shakespeare outside of a high school class, Shakespeare has a lot of sex in it, right? It's a lot of sexual innuendos, which you're not learning about in high school, of course, but in college. So you have this hot young professor talking all about sex all day. And let me tell you, every girl was like, elective, I'll take Shakespeare. Like that class was packed.
we were reading Titus Andronicus in high school. So
Wow.
which is like one of my favorites to this day. Um, but yeah, so just opening the mind to stepping out of this boxed up idea that we're just supposed to go through the motions, right?
So
And
I'm
that's
just
kind of one
curious
thing.
because you do. So I know you work with mostly high achieving women, women who are pretty successful in life and they hit burnout. And I feel like maybe it was always a term and I just wasn't old enough to hear it, but I do feel like I hear the term burnout a lot more than I ever did. I don't remember hearing that term when I was in my 20s or 30s. And maybe it's, again, maybe I was too young and it wasn't part of the world that I'm in now. So I'm curious, why do you, well, a couple of questions. Do you feel like burnout is more common now than it was before? Do you feel like it's a newer thing? Or do you feel like it was just always there? We just didn't have a term for it. And do you see that burnout happens more with people who are high achievers versus other people? Are there like warning signs that you see? Because sometimes, I mean, quite openly, there are moments where I'm like, yeah, I can relate to some burnout. I'm feeling there. I mean, I've been joking the last 2 years, and I know we haven't talked in a while, but the last 2 years have been two of the hardest of my life. And I've now come to uh, just acceptance of that. I'm like, well, wine is how I'm getting through life right now at that age. And it's interesting because apparently wine is a socially acceptable way to get through life. There's that whole, I don't know if it's good for you. It's certainly not healthy for you, but there's that whole mommy, wine culture that is very culturally acceptable. So that is how I'm coping with
Well,
life right now.
your wine knocks down your alpha wave by a notch. So if you are in
What's
burnout,
an
it's very,
alpha
very
wave?
common.
I
So
don't know what an
alpha
alpha
is
wave
like,
is.
so when you're overthinking and you're really intense and you're working really hard and you're waking up in the middle of the night and you're thinking too much, that alpha wave is going. And so we self-medicate with wine. It knocks down that overthinking, right? And
Ah,
so we're that whole wine culture, it goes right into the burnout thing. It's, oh, I've had a long day. And actually I know sober curious coaches who have told me before that like one of the biggest demographics of people who struggle with alcohol are runners, because they have this all or nothing mindset where it's like I go out and I run really hard, and then after a marathon I go drink with my buddies, right? And so, especially
Interesting.
here in Colorado, that's like a big thing. And I was like, really? I wouldn't have thought
I would
that, but
never
think,
put those 2 together.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other problem with
Wow.
wine is that it's going to raise your threshold for cortisol. So you drink your wine, and then the next day, your stress levels are going to be a little higher. So you need to have another glass of wine the next day to knock that back down. It's kind of like coffee. You drink your coffee, you think you're getting a high, but you're just back to where everybody else is normally once you get used to drinking coffee every day. You're waking up and needing coffee to get to where everyone else just wakes up naturally, because we have these thresholds and our body's really good at balancing out. So wine and coffee are like, they're they're notorious with the burnout culture for sure.
Wow. Okay, so and you don't have to answer this. I'm gonna put you on the spot because you work in the functional medicine, and I know you're very health and gut and everything. Do you drink wine and coffee?
I do. I do.
You
I
do?
don't
Okay.
drink as
That makes
much
me feel
wine.
better.
I drink way too much coffee and I have to really work on that.
And
my
it's so
my
funny.
doctor,
I keep hearing you saying coffee, coffee. That's what my daughter says. I'm from Jersey. We say coffee.
yes.
So I am like, you mean coffee, right? We're drinking a cup of coffee. All right. So your doctor, I didn't mean to interrupt your doctor saying,
No, she's always on me about reduce the caffeine. And so I'm trying to get down. I was like a 5 or 6 cup a day, and I'm down to like 2 or 3. I'm doing really good right now.
wow. So I had
So
gotten
yeah.
to a point where so I never drank coffee actually. That wasn't I thought it was disgusting. I remember having coffee when I was working as a temp through college because people, like to drink coffee in the corporate environment and just thinking it was kind of gross. So I never really drank it. And then when Emily went into the hospital, there was a parents lounge and you spent a lot of time. I mean, I lived in the parents lounge, right? And they would come and do their rounds at 6 o'clock in the morning when you're half dead because you've been up all night with a puking kid, right? And they would come in to talk to you and you have to be coherent. And that was when I started drinking coffee because it was free and it was in the parents lounge and it was readily available. And that is the beginning of my love and addiction of coffee, but it had gotten to the point where I was drinking multiple cups during the day where I was getting, like, jittery, and then when I wouldn't drink it, I would get massive headaches. And so I went from 3 cups to 1 cup and had to kind of really I can't even imagine 5 or 6, but I had to work to reduce that because I would get a migraine if I didn't drink coffee. So I started doing where you would do, like, half and half. I'd put, like, half decaf in and half regular in, and then slowly worked that down. But I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth, and it's like clockwork. It is that habit of I walk downstairs, I go straight to my Keurig, I put my one and that's why I have a Keurig and not a coffee pot because that way I can only do 1 cup, right? So probably not as yummy as if I was making some fresh, brewed coffee, but don't talk to me. I'm one of those do not talk to me until I had my cup.
Yep.
And and you have to go, wow, I don't like to think of myself as an addict, but when you have that kind of don't talk to me until I had my cup of coffee, I mean, you have to admit that that's an addiction, right?
Well, and I don't have to don't talk to me before my coffee, but I have a husband that always has a pot that's gone, that's like
Mm.
on. And
All
so I
right,
have a
Frank,
really
it's
hard
your fault.
time. I know he's all about it. But that's okay. I think we need vices in our lives as long as we understand what it's doing, and know how to take a break too. When I was a barista, I used to drink a ton of coffee and then I would take a break for a month. And that was probably the healthiest cycle, where it's like I take a break so I'm not getting headaches and stuff. And I was really good at
Mm.
that take a break, take a step away. And I'll do that with alcohol too. I'll go a year or two without alcohol even. And the non-alcoholic options out there, let me tell you, are getting way, way, way better than they used to be. So you don't have to feel left out if you want to take a break from alcohol. So I'm always an advocate for a good non-alcoholic beer. There's a lot of amazing ones out there. The wines, some of them are better than others, but you can find one or two that's pretty good. So
I'm also a big I love seltzer, flavored seltzer. So if I go out, and particularly if everybody else is drinking and I don't necessarily want to have another drink, I'll do some kind of flavored seltzer or seltzer with lime because then at least I feel like I'm drinking something a little fancy. It's not just a plain water, you know.
I will sometimes recommend doing seltzer with bitters so that you're not really having an alcohol, but it's got that alcohol feel to it, right? I mean,
Oh,
there's a little alcohol in the bitters, but if you just do a few splashes, then you kind of get that bite, and it's like, ooh, that feels
I've
good.
never heard of that. There's a lot of new. We actually just had a Hey Girl You Can ladies night out. It was our first one. And we had a woman there who was a functional medicine doctor, pharmacist. I think she was a functional medicine pharmacist. And she brought they're these elixirs, so they're in cans, and you probably know what they are. They're for people who don't want to drink alcohol, but want to have something when they get home from work to kind of calm them down. And so they have like the L-theanine in them, and they have like ashwagandha and stuff like that. I don't know what they're called though. There's a fancy name for them.
There's a
I see
lot
them
of them. I know
all the
Apothecary is one of them.
Okay, I see them on my Instagram all the time. So I was kind of excited to try them because I said to her, "Do you think that actually does the same relaxation, kind of mellow you out a little bit as you would from a glass of wine?" And she was clearly saying, this is a lot healthier for you than drinking a glass of wine.
Yeah, you don't have that the next morning where you have to make up for it too. We're paying today for tomorrow's exhaustion, right? And that's the problem with wine. And so that's where it's like, do I really want this wine enough that it's going to make me tired tomorrow?
Hmm. So I'm curious. You said something that I had not heard before about eating at your desk.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, I said that I was overwhelmed and racked with guilt because I eat at my desk all the time. So,
Oh,
what what is so bad about that? Like, what's the difference? And I guess this is my thought. I'm thinking, what's the difference if I'm sitting here at my desk versus I'm sitting at the kitchen table? I'm working at home. Who cares where I'm sitting while I'm eating?
well, your email is for many, many people the place where we get activated, right? We're in that fight or flight when we're checking an email and somebody said something that's not right, or we got something that's like, oh no, that's a deadline I have to hit, right? So depending on what you're doing at your computer, maybe, but you're also checked out. So there's two pieces to it. And the first is the fight or flight. If you're in fight or flight and stress and you're eating, then the opposite of fight or flight is rest and digest. Your body is pulling blood away from your digestive system, away from your brain, so that it can feed your muscles and you can run away from a tiger. And that's fine if you're not trying to digest food. But if you're trying to digest food, you need to sit at the table, light a nice candle, have a conversation, really focus on your food. Digestion starts in the brain. So when we think about food, insulin's released in our body to start processing sugar. So just thinking about food gets your saliva moving. It releases insulin. You like if you talk about eating apples, being a coach, I talk about food all day long and I'm hungry all the time because it's like, oh, so you could make an apple with peanut butter and then it's like, oh, now I want one. So your body is prepping you and so I talk a lot about meditation and cooking and food preparation too. But if you are sitting at your desk and you are dealing with problems, then your brain does not know that that's not a tiger. Just
Huh.
because we're sitting still does not mean that we're not running away from something. We can watch a TV about someone getting chased by a tiger and have the exact same physical response as if there's a tiger in nature that's going to come after us.
Interesting. I had heard about 2 years ago, I have a functional medicine doctor who sent me to see did we talk about this? She had sent me to see a nutritionist, and that's when I went gluten-free. That was one of the first things was to go gluten-free. I have high inflammation, and so it was this whole process of what can we do to get down your inflammation, and I still have high inflammation, but it's coming down, so that was positive. I think it went down about 25 whatever markers, um, in my last blood work. And she had said to me something similar about before you eat, take even just a couple of mindful breaths to get focused because I tend to eat standing up. I'm talking to somebody, I'm in the middle of doing something and I'm eating, or I'm eating to see, okay, like how fast can I eat before I can get on to my next thing? And then I eat too fast.
Yeah.
And she was saying, because I'm like, okay, I want to lose weight. I want to get fitter. I want to feel healthier. And so she was saying, even if you just take 3 minutes, 5 minutes before you eat and you slow down and do some mindful breathing and get focused, it will affect your weight. You'll process your food differently, exactly what you were saying. And that was the first time I had ever heard that. To me, the idea was if I'm eating an apple, I'm eating an apple. It's the same exact apple. And the way she sent it, and I see you shaking your head, is it's not the same apple. You're taking it in differently based on what's going on with your body. That was a completely bizarre, random new thought that, again, we started out talking about school, right? Like, why did nobody teach us this in health class? Like, that was something I had never heard before. I actually thought she was a little off her rocker.
So
I was like, that's bizarre.
did you know your gut has about 40,000 neurons in it? Like your heart
No.
has neurons, your brain has neurons. Your body is not this disconnected head and brain, and then your stomach and your body and everything is like a thing. What we think, it cyclically works with how we digest, how our heart rate goes. If we're in stress, the heart rate goes up. Adrenaline and like all and cortisol and all of these hormones are released. Our hormones are processed different in our body. And so that's why I ended up on this path of stress, is because I work with people who generally have hormone issues and gut health problems. So the doctor sees most of these people gut health, hormone. And what is the thing that I have found helps them most? It's reducing stress. Um,
Do you think that's
which
why
is
there's
crazy.
a weight issue in our country? Do you think it has to do with our eating, or do you think it has to do with our stress?
It has to do with a lot of things. I think there's a lot of really processed, terrible foods out there. I think that we are stressed. I think that there's not a lot of activity, right? We're not moving. So when you watch a continuous glucose monitor, if you're watching your blood sugar, most people have a drop in blood sugar if they move after they eat. But most of us are working desk jobs and we don't get up and move around. If you get up and walk for 10 minutes, for I think it was like 2 or 3 minutes, they were saying it changes your blood sugar. Even as short as 2 or 3 minutes
Wow.
will help you process sugars better. So getting up and walking after lunch is a great, great trick. Sit down while you eat in a chair, focus on your food, get up, walk around. And you can do that in a short period of time. I know everybody's time crunched. I know it's hard to step away from work, but I had a patient once that told me that I had told her all this stuff and we were talking about chewing and being mindful of her food, and she thought I was kind of crazy. And then she accidentally went on vacation, was away from her family, had limited access to her computer, and she was sitting down having meals with clients. So she was talking over food. And within 10 days, these very severe stomach symptoms turned around for her. So it's very real. It's not just like
Wow.
floofy grandma said to chew your food. It's very real stuff. The difference between artificial light and candlelight when you're eating can make a difference. I mean, it's so silly, but it's so powerful. And this is stuff that everyone has access to.
Wow. Well, I was at the gym yesterday. I I would like this is funny. So, I was in a convention a couple of years ago. It was it was in the middle of the pandemic. So, we had to test before we could get there. We had to test when we showed up there. And obviously there were not a lot of people who went because it was still kind of a high risk time. And I was shocked because there were a ton of women who were in their 70s that were there, not masked, and at this convention, and they all had all of this energy. They were all in great shape. Now, I will say the convention was in Georgia, so most of these people were from Florida. And I kind of joke, the pandemic never hit Florida. So I think that played a part of why they felt, comfortable going versus us in the Northeast. But I kept asking these women because they were just vibrant. I kept thinking, you are who I want to be. Right? Like, you are who I want to be when I am your age. You have all of this energy. You're in better shape than I am. They looked great. And so I kept asking them, like, tell me what's your and I mean, these women randomly, like, I would sit down and be like, so tell me, what's your secret to like all your energy? You look great. You're a great weight. They all said the same thing. It annoyed the hell out of me. Every single one of them was like, oh, I walk every day. I play tennis. Even if they didn't physically go and exercise, they were active. Oh, I walk, I ride my bike. And I was like, I just really want someone to say to me, I drink margaritas under a palm tree. Like, I want that to be the answer. Can I please find that person? And it wasn't just one person, it was every single person. I was so annoyed at the end.
Mhm.
And so I've kind of come to the sad acceptance that the body that I had when I was young, which I was very naturally thin and didn't have to work out, is not the body that I can have now as I'm in my 40s, right? And so when I follow a lot of women who are in really great shape, they talk about lifting heavy weights and they exercise and they work out. And I don't particularly care for the gym. I don't particularly care to work out. So I took a class yesterday because I am like, okay, but I would like to be able to drink my margaritas under the palm tree and I need to be able to work out to do that. Right. And I had this thought as I'm in this class, and there were probably like 20 women in the class. And I'm like, how dumb is this? How dumb is it that we've created a world where people have to pay hundreds of dollars a month for a gym membership so you can take a class for somebody to push you to lift a weight and do an exercise and squat and all of this stuff. Thinking back to like where we came from, like hundreds of years ago, nobody was in a gym, right? We were just active, and we've created such, and I don't know if it's in a pursuit for success or development or technology. We've actually gone backwards and making ourselves so unhealthy that we have to pay someone to make us work out, right? Or to take a class. Now, yes, and somebody could argue, no, you can work at home and you can do all that and you can work at home, and that's fine too. I'm saying though, you have to carve out time. Like you have to carve out time in your schedule to say, I'm going to be active at this time versus just saying, I'm active. Like that's just part of my life, right? Like my grandmother never went to a gym. My grandmother lived to 100. Like she never went to a gym.
Well,
And I
I
don't,
worked at UPS for 4 years, and that was a great job. Didn't pay tons, but I didn't have to pay for the gym. And when you factor all that in, um, and
because you were just
I
active.
remember, yeah, and then I would come home and I would stretch because my body wanted more activity. And when you get to a place where you're moving all the time, then it feels really good and you get addicted to it. So when I'm dealing with people who are trying to learn how to work out, the biggest thing is making a habit, putting it in the same place every day and doing something that feels good that you can do and will do. And so, like, I think it's Atomic Habits. He says the habit is the first minute that you're there. It's the first minute or two. It's getting to the gym. It's putting on the clothes. It's getting on the yoga mat. So you get yourself there, you get on the yoga mat, and maybe you just sit there one day. And maybe you sit there for 2 days or a week. But eventually you're going to start feeling like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to move. This is the time that I've carved out for this. So just keep checking the box. I'm here. I'm sitting on my yoga mat. Maybe I'm in protest right now because it is not in my brain that this is what I do, but slowly you can shift that by doing something that feels really good and not pushing yourself trying to do P90X to start, right?
Right.
I When I was in my best shape, strike working, the warehouse, is when I was doing a yoga program. I did a 3-week yoga program, and then it slowly moved into wanting to lift weights, and then it slowly moved. But I had to do something that felt good for my body, or I would not have continued to have the habit.
And that is one of the reasons why I joined the gym, because I was like, yes, I can do this at home, and we have, YouTube, and you could do yoga on YouTube and all of that. But I do like going there. It's beautiful. It's very spa-like. I love the locker room, and I'm like, well, at least if I have a place where I enjoy showing up, then maybe that will make me more likely to go, even if I don't enjoy what I have to do while I'm there. Right. So that's interesting. I didn't really make that connection to that. That first step is that I like walking through those doors. I don't like
Mhm.
what's on the other side of the door, but I like walking through the doors.
Well, what don't you like about it? Step into your body instead of doing this thing that I don't want to do and I can't be. Like, if you want to be the kind of person who works out, then get in your body 100% and just feel what feels really good. Like, I'm going to walk really fast. I'm going to do the speed walk with the little fanny pack, and I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to look awesome, right? Play, have fun. That's another thing that we really, really lack right now. And it's another reason why we're so stressed. Is that people don't have fun. We're not willing to do it. So go have fun. Find somebody that'll go play with you and make it a thing. Make it fun. I
So,
know.
what do you think are some of the warning signs that people have when we're talking about burnout? I just kind of want to, because I know we're finishing up and I want to circle back to what you do with burnout being so common. Are there certain things that you see? Hey, these are your red flags. If you don't address these now, you will be in burnout.
So if you're not setting boundaries with people, unfortunately, if you're a really nice people pleaser who's trying to do everything for everyone and you're not taking care of yourself first, you are going to burn out. It's the air mask on the airplane. And I've been there. I understand it. I still struggle with it on a daily basis. But if you won't take the air mask for yourself, you're not going to be very useful for very long for many people.
Do you think I
And
just wanna ask you, and I don't know if you coach men or women, but do you find that more of an issue for women than men?
yes, absolutely. And that's why I coach more women, probably, because that's a big, big thing for them.
Mm.
We're trying to take care of we're trying to take care of the house, the kids, the jobs, um, and our parents, our aging parents. I mean, in this time, people, in their 40s and 50s, it's coming from all directions. Your kids are going to college or dealing with whatever they're dealing with, and um, yeah, so that's big. And if you're not setting boundaries, you're also not teaching the people around you to be self-sufficient. And it's like it's easier for me to do it right now. If I just make their lunch before they go to school, then it'll be done and it'll be fast. And right now, in the moment when it's urgent, that might be the best way. But ultimately, we want to train our kids the same thing that we were talking about with the schooling. We want to train our kids how to make their own lunch. They need to know how to pour their own glass of milk. And if we're constantly doing things for our parents, for our kids, for our friends, and we're not teaching them how to treat us, we're not teaching them how to function in the world, we're not being our authentic self, then they're getting a sloppy version of us because we're not showing up in our full potential, right? And we're enabling. And so I think a lot of
Mhm.
times we think I'm giving, I'm helping them, I'm doing all these things for them so they don't have so much stress. But when you turn that lens and start to look at, no, actually, I'm kind of enabling the people around me to continue to treat me in the way that they do, to continue to put more pressure on me. And I'm enabling myself not to have to be the one that makes me happy. So,
Did you ever see those videos on Instagram? They're like the kids in either I don't know if it's China or Japan, and they're in kindergarten and what they're doing in kindergarten. Have you ever seen these crazy videos? You have to, like if you haven't, you have to Google them, it's wild. It's like these five-year-olds, and I can't remember if it's Japan or China, I think it's China, and they're literally cooking, like, full meals, they're
oh, yeah,
building
yeah,
brick ovens, they have, like, little stores going on, I mean, they're little mini adults, and I'm thinking here in the US in kindergarten, I remember going to my daughter's class and being like, "These kids are just learning how to take their pants out their hands out of their nose and their pants, like,
yeah,
what's going on here?" And you watch these videos and you're like, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna be taken over by China," because it is wild.
yeah.
And when you watch them, you're thinking either, at least my thought goes to either this is absolutely insane and this is like child abuse, or wow, we really dumb our kids down. I'm not sure which I think it is, but it's just so night and day from what we do with our kids here.
It is. One thing that I really like to point out for people is that when we look for to please other people, a lot of times we're getting our dopamine hit and feeling good about
Mm.
ourselves by having other people say good things about us. And that means that we're also not taking care of ourselves and giving ourselves the kind of kudos that we need, and showing up for ourselves. So not only are you enabling others, but you're not showing up for yourself. And so these kids in China, maybe they've got it figured out. They're showing up for themselves. They can lift the thing. They don't have to get mommy and daddy to do it for them. And they can contribute. Like, how good does that feel if everybody in the community is contributing and building something beautiful together? And that's what I want to see. I want to see us start
Wow.
building beautiful communities, right? So
Anything else? Any last things you wanna share about that burnout? Because I feel like we could have a whole episode just on that for people, right? On what's going on and women being very stressed out and overwhelmed, and I feel like between the constant media interface all day long, constant advertising, noise, um, that I find myself and I feel like I have a good toolbox, and yet I find myself daily going, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm at my breaking point." One of the things I decided with Emily going off to college was that this was the year I was going to really focus on my health, which is why I'm going to the gym, even though I don't want to. I will be drinking my wine still, but on my way to the gym. But I was like, I need to really get my anxiety level down, my stress level down. Um, so anything else I heard you say, people pleasing, um, doing things for other people that they can do for themselves. Any other like warning signs we should be looking for?
if you're out of your body a lot, if you're worried about what other people are thinking about you, that's a good indicator that you're out of your body. If you're not in your physical present moment, and I know that that sounds a little woo, but we spend a lot of time in the thinking space out in front of our forehead or out around us, and we don't often come in and check in with the body and how am I feeling? Like, what is my gut doing? Am I clenching it? Am I slouching? Like, how is my body? And so I really like to encourage meditations. And I am actually really excited because I just got my morning meditation up and I'm planning to do a few more of these. But find something where you can set up your day first thing in the morning when you wake up and you're in that transition from sleeping to being awake. There's a really receptive time for our brain to program how we want things to go. And so if you can wake up in the morning and imagine how you want your day to go and set your intention for your energy, it really can shift how you move through the world.
Well, this
Um,
is perfect segue into because I know you have a gift for our listeners. So why
mm,
don't if you're listening, Jess has a gift for you. So we'll go right into that and you can share what that is.
yeah, so just hit the link. That we'll put it below the video here. It's a meditation for the morning. It's 8 minutes. You can listen to it. It's got this beautiful video with it of a natural nature scene, so it's not the fakey background stuff. It's a real fog scene over a valley, and it just gives you a moment to, if you want that visual piece, you step in and you can just recenter with nature. That's another piece we're missing a lot is connecting with nature. We're inside houses all the time. So having even a picture of nature in your office will change the way your day goes.
Mm,
Just a
I love
picture.
that.
That's all. Yep.
Well, so interesting because I've loved looking at the background that you have behind you. So if you're listening to the audio, you don't see Jess has this beautiful forest behind her. But we'll put the meditation in the show notes. If you're listening to the podcast, it'll be below the video. If you're here with us on YouTube, but great way to connect and be able to also connect with Jessica and do more of what she's doing. And I think it's important also to be in the space of people that remind you to slow down. Right.
Yes.
Because if everybody around you is on this place, you're going to be on a place. But if you have just a voice in your head, whether that's Jessica's voice or some voice in your head that's saying, hey, just remember, don't eat at your desk, be mindful, take a few breaths, relax. Even just when you say that, and I don't know for those of you who are listening, but even when you say that, are you present? It made me go, huh, am I really? Like you realize how disconnected you are from your body. Um, Great
Well, and
reminder for all of
if
us.
you identify as one of these people who's got burnout, which a lot of us, most of us do, pop in and throw in your email address too, and you can get my weekly email or my bi-monthly email, not weekly, and it will just give you tips and tricks as I come along with my coaching stuff. So
I
it's
love
just
that.
one way to stay connected.
So when we were talking about your email stressing you out, that'll be a good one to get that will de-stress you to have
That's
in
right.
your inbox. So if you liked today's episode, I really hope that you will subscribe, that you will come back. Of course, would love a review if you loved today. If you didn't, it's okay. You don't need to leave a review. But then hopefully you'll join us next time because we'll have another interesting person for another irrelevant conversation. Why? Because life is really worth laughing at. Thanks for being here, everybody. Bye.